The George Brown Award for Investigations pays tribute to the founder of the Globe, who made it his mission to demand that governments apply both fairness and compliance with constitutional principles. George Brown's Globe of the 1800s set out accusations of corruption and double-dealing and backed them up with hard evidence. This award honoring investigative journalism that afflicts the comfortable is sponsored by the Globe and Mail. When a nurse was nearly strangled by a patient, Montreal Gazette reporter Aaron Derfel began probing. He learned that violence at Montreal General Hospital had been increasing, and that authorities were turning a blind eye to it and engaged in a cover-up. His investigation ended up being broader and deeper than one launched by the province's Workplace Health and Safety Board in response to the initial story. Derfel's four-part series led to the dismissal of 3 managers, the addition of more security guards, and installation of new panic buttons and closed-circuit cameras. Judges said the deeply researched accounts exemplified what public interest reporting should be and were topped off by skilled storytelling that brought it all to vivid life. St. Catharines Standard reporter Grant LaFlèche uncovered a political conspiracy to manipulate the hiring of Niagara Region's top bureaucrat and a secret contract worth more than $1 million. In All the Chair's Men, LaFlèche exposed the fact that the office of Niagara's regional chair had provided confidential information, including interview questions to one candidate for a senior and high-paying job. The candidate was hired with a generous 3-year severance provision. After LaFlèche continued uncovering damaging new information, the regional chair finished 20th in a municipal election. Most other councillors also lost, and the man hired as chief administrative officer began negotiating an exit. Judges said LaFlèche's series represented relentless, unflinching determination to bring corruption to light. 2 decaying Vancouver hotels were ordered closed a year apart, leaving many residents in the poverty-stricken downtown East Side neighborhood with nowhere to go. Wendy Stuick and Mike Hager of the Globe and Mail began asking pointed questions that exposed the hotel owners' neglect and wealth, and the city of Vancouver's inability or unwillingness to do much about the situation. The day after the investigative piece ran, the BC government announced it would consider buying the problem buildings, and eventually the city announced it would expropriate the properties if the owners refused to sell. Judges said the series raised crucial questions about the effectiveness of the agency created to oversee public housing.
And the George Brown Award for Investigations goes to Grant LaFlèche of the St. Catharines Standard.
Ridiculous. Thank you very much. This is a tremendous honor. Really, I'm not from the Globe and Mail. How did I win this? I'm teasing, kids. It's okay. One of the things I'm always saying in the newsroom is context is king. And I could talk for hours about how we did this story. I started in November 2017, and it's not over. I thought this was going to be one story when we published it in April of 2018. I thought there'll be a couple of stories that spin out of it, and then, I can go back to sleep because I hadn't really slept since November prior. More than 50 stories later, this is still going on. And just to kind of give you a sense as to how hard this is for us, because small newspapers like the St. Catharines Standard have been hammered by cuts. When I started in '98, when I had no gray hair in my head to speak of whatsoever, we had an editorial staff of 39 editors and reporters. Today, we have 5 reporters. We have 2 editors and 2 photographers, but they work for the Niagara Falls Review and the Welland Tribune, our 2 sister Metroland Tour Star papers in the Niagara region. So we're kind of always MacGyvering these stories with, chewing gum and string and duct tape. And every time I'm committing this has consumed my life for now almost a year and a half, and every time I'm doing one of these stories, my colleagues have to pick up the slack. And we're a very, very small newsroom. And when we got hit with big cuts, I don't know that anybody would have really got upset enough if we had kind of said, well, it was a good run. The paper's been around for nearly 200 years. We did what we could. But this really strange thing happened at the Standard in the last year and a half without anybody having a conversation about it, without anybody saying, we got to pick up the slack. We just sort of evolved, all of us, to get this story done. And finally, without boring you, without going on and on, there's one thing I want everybody in this room to remember. We live in a very strange time where you're called fake news, alternative facts, of Donald Trump, of Ontario News Now. Good Lord, don't get me started. And it can be very hard to believe that what we do matters because there's so much noise. But if this showed us anything in Niagara, and if anybody can learn from it, is that people will read us, and they will still trust us, and they will still act on the things that we write. So this kind of work, I think, is more important than ever because we have to cut through the noise and we have to make people sit up and listen. And in all seriousness, the reporters who are also nominated here tonight, you guys kind of scare the crap out of me because you're so good. So merci and thank you very much.